Now, now the index.js is a blank file. I don't have anything over here. So that's the reason and nothing is rendered over here. Now, so this since the extension is JS, so that is JavaScript. So what we can write in JavaScript, we can write anything that is there. How we are writing the code in JavaScript, the same code we can write over here. But in React, since this is a React file, we have something called JSX. What is JSX? JSX means JavaScript inside HTML. That means yes, the HTML and JavaScript occurs simultaneously. So we'll go the details about JSX later, but I just want to write some code over here. So if I write one function over here, similarly like in JS we were writing function with a function name, right? So I'll write function with a function name, okay? And you remember that we have to write the function, it should start with the capital letter. If you write small letter, it will not work, okay? That is how function syntax is in React, okay? This function doesn't looks anything different from our how we're writing creating functions in JavaScript. But then with the return type, what you get is that I can return something like I this is another. Now what is this? This looks like an HTML, okay? This is an HTML, but we are returning the value. We are returning the we are returning the HTML, okay? So the return time is compulsory, okay? Wherever you are writing function, whenever you are writing a function, the return is compulsory. The function name should begins with a capital letter, and then it should return something, okay? It should return a HTML, or it can. So this is a J. This is called a function, okay? So this is called a component. Now this is called a component because we are returning some HTML part of it, okay? If we don't return a HTML, it becomes a normal function, okay? A function is a component is always a function, but a function is will be a component only when it returns a HTML part. So we'll go details about it, but then you know that this is a function which is also a component, and it should have a capital letter, and its return keyword is compulsory, and it can return a HTML, okay? Now let me save this. So when I save this, I am expecting that I will see this the text over here, right? Because this is an HTML element. So I'm expecting that this should be visible over here. So let's save over here. When I save over here, what I see, I don't see anything, right? I don't see anything. The reason is we are not, when I'm saying that this is a component, which means that it behaves as a HTML element. So the component can be, it looks like an HTML element, but it is not an HTML element, okay? That means to see this part, this function need to be called, okay? And this function need to be, how this we can call this function, is when we are declaring the function, or we are adding the function in the renderer part. So what do I mean by that is, what we should do right now is we should create a root, okay? So we have to get a root now, and let me add capital letter root. So what I'll write react dot create root, okay? So it's not react, it's react dom. So I have to add react dom above first, so that you can but then I'll add it later. So I'll be using document dot get element by id. So if you remember, what we had done earlier is, so let me write it first, okay? Now I have to do a root. Let me add a small root, small r, okay? So this root dot render. So in that, now I have to add greeting. So this means that I'm calling greeting over here, okay? But it doesn't identify what is react dom, so I just need to import react dom from react, and then I have to import react itself, right? Import react, okay? So this should be, it is not a default, so we shouldn't have these. So this will be react hyphen dom slash client, and this will be the so we are importing two things from library from React, that is React and React DOM, and we'll be using it over here. So basically what I'm, so let me save for that, I'll explain. When I save here, what I get, let it reload. So I am getting this component. Hi, this is Sarath. Okay, I am getting this, which means that first of all, what we did, we created this component. Okay, now we have to show this part, that is the HTML part, in the browser over here, which means that I have to call this function. Okay, but this is not a function. This is a it's a function, but it's a component as well. For a component, I have to I have to, for calling a for using a component, I have to use right like this. Okay, I have to use like this. But then you see this is a component, but we don't have a opening and closing tag like in HTML. We can use it over here, but then shortened is we will use a slash at the end. That means that we are not using a opening tag. Only this tag only. It means that we are having a opening and closing tag. Okay. Now, what are these things? Now, if I write only this over here, this won't get it will not work. Why? Because I have to render it. Okay, I have to render it by using a render method. Okay, now what is the render method? The render method is there as part of root. But what is root? You see, root is react dom dot create root. So what is react dom? So react has its own dom. It gets its own document object model. Like in JavaScript we had a dom, right? We had a tree like structure where you have written the HTML comes in a tree like structure. First HTML tag, then body tag, head tag, then body tag, inside body tag div or content or whatever you are using writing HTML, that will be in a tree like structure, that is DOM. So React has its own DOM, it forms its own DOM that will, I'll explain deep about it, but then if in one line if I say that React, what is the role of React DOM, it will help in speeding the application, like it will help in increasing the efficiency, and whether the rendering happens very fast because of React DOM. Okay, now I'll explain about this later as well. But React DOM, what it does, it uses it has a method called create root, and with the create root, what I mean that we create the root place or root element or the root component. Basically, we are creating a root component. Now the greeting is the root component. It's a component, but it's the root component as well. That means it is the first component of our application, of this application. Okay, React tutorial. Now we are creating a root component, then that root component should lie somewhere, right? Now where it should lie? It should lie inside. So if I have showed you earlier, so this is a public folder. In the public folder we are having, let me open public folder. In the public folder we are having index.html, and in the index.html we have a this part is there, line number 31, div ide root. What do you mean by this? This is the place where the, like I said in previous video, this is the place where the entire component will lie. That means the root component will lie over here, right? That's the reason what we are doing is we are trying to get the document to get element by id root. That means we are trying to get the location or the root element first. Now we get the root div first because it's a div, right? It's a div over here. So I'm getting the reference to this div. That means I get the reference of this div with this id root. So here I get the reference of that particular element, and to that element I am adding my greeting component, which is our parent component. Okay, so now I used create root method, which is there inside React DOM, and what I'm saying that I am fetching this uh, id this div id div with id root, and I'm making that as a as the parent as the place where the parent component will lie. Then I am attaching this component that I have created to this particular location, okay. That means my greeting component is now the parent component, and it will lie inside this div. Now how will I know that? If I do a right click, you see, if I do a right click and go to the inspect element, what you will see is this is the div id root. Okay, now inside this div id root I am having this, hi, this is Sarath. Okay, which means that our greeting component has become now the parent component, and this greetings component content, that is this, lies at this location. At which location? At this location. Okay, this location is where? In index.html, inside the public folders. Inside the public folder I am having index.html. there I'm having this element, that is div id equals to root, and at this place I'm having the return component. Okay. Now, if you find any error over here, like suppose in some cases I see that you get an error over here that this is not rendering. So in that case, you have to just stop the server by typing Control C. You stop it and then start it again by writing by typing npm start again. Okay. So by that, whenever you face any error, you just need to stop the server and start uh, again. So here it will be coming again, it will be loading again. Now here if you see, if I will change, let it load, but if I change it to small letter, now you see if I change to small letter over here and I change to small letter over here as well. Okay. Now let it come. So if I do like this, if I change this to small letter, there is no a syntactical error over here, or there is no logical error over here. But when I save it over here, if you see, when I save over here, what will you now our in the new tab our react application has been loaded again. Now I change to small letter. Now you see I don't see anything. Okay. When I do a right click and then inspect element, what I see is, if I go to the console, what I see, the tag heading is unrecognized in this browser. If you meant to render a react component, starts name with an uppercase letter. Okay. That means it is default trying to it is saying that you have to use uppercase letter. Now when I save over here, if you see, when I save, I get this component back. Okay. Always remember that the component name should begin with a capital letter. Okay. And the component is nothing but a function. It should begin with a capital letter. It should always have a return, and it will return a HTML thing. That is this portion is called JSX. Okay. That is JavaScript inside HTML. Okay. Now we created this the root. We made this component as a parent component by attaching this component into the div with an ID as root, and there we just attach it. So at this line, line number 9, we are attaching this parent component to the root element. Then the root element will lie at this position where I am writing root. Now if I change the id to something else, then I have to mention that that something else id should be mentioned over here, but don't change anything. Hope you understood how we rendered our first component. So let's go to the next video.